Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 90. Here we are again, another goalie on the podcast. Happy to say, two smartest guys in the room today. So this guy's no different. He went the major junior route. I actually grew up watching him. Funny enough, back when he played in Belleville, I was in Peterborough there, and definitely saw some duels there. That was always a heated rivalry. After his OHL days, went on to have a pro career. I believe it was 8 years long before transitioning into goalie coaching, and now he's general manager of the Kingston Frontenacs of the OHL. Just another organization, as I said, I grew up watching, have a lot of respect for, and they've built a culture there over the years. Happy to have him on the podcast. Welcome, Kory Cooper.
Thanks, Hersey. Yeah, certainly. The goalie club. I guess it's safe to say it's the smart group, no doubt. Probably the best looking group too.
We always say the closer you are to the net, the smarter you are. So it starts with the goalies and works your way out. But I always like to kind of go back to where it started for you. So you grew up in obviously in PEI there. What's kind of the first childhood memory you have of growing up there?
I mean, wow, you're going back a long time. It's certainly still a family in PEI. I visit there every summer and spend a few weeks. But yeah, I just grew up around the game. To be honest, with you, around the hockey school and PEI, Alan Anders hockey growth programs, and spending 6 to 8 weeks a summer just hanging around the rink. As a kid, I was always a rink rat. Just wanted to be around the ice surface and on the ice and playing, and it was just my passion. It's what I enjoyed to do. Met a lot of people there that still, lifelong friends with, and certainly talk to on a regular basis. And played my minor hockey all the way through. I guess what will be titled now as U15. And then had some success in minor hockey in PEI, and was looking to transition to some different things and move up the ladder. And back then there was certainly no Quebec League teams that were, part of the Maritime Loop. The Quebec League was the Quebec League, and you got to choose which league you prefer to go to. So, being the Q, the OHL, and the Western League, I settled on wanting to pursue the OHL, and was able to play Junior A, I believe in PEI, in Smiths Falls. So, great childhood memories. Love getting back home and visiting people in the island. Still go into the arena to check out Anders hockey growth programs in the summer when I'm back and see some friends. So, yeah, certainly that was a big part of my upbringing.
And I always like to ask the goalies when they're on this podcast, like, it's a crazy position. Some people ask us why we choose it. So I'm going to ask you that question. What made you want to become a goalie?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I would say for me, the style, the gear, watching games, NHL games on TV when you could, was certainly a big part of it. Just looked like a cool, unique position. It's one of one, certainly on the ice. So that was for me important. And you got to be on the ice all the time. You know what I mean? So you're playing regularly. So I was watching, Grant Fuhrers and Andy Moes and Pelle Lindbergs and guys of that era, and just thought it was a cool, unique position, and one that you're a huge part of the team.
Ended up being the right choice, as we'll get to throughout your career here. You mentioned you made the jump eventually to junior there in Smith Falls, and I mean, as a 16-year-old, as a goalie, that's a big jump. And what a year you had! I believe you won goalie of the year, rookie of the year, top prospects award, and then you mentioned you wanted to take that next step to the major junior. And I recently saw like an interview you did with I believe it was on the OHL there on their Instagram, and you talking about the 94 draft, being drafted to Belleville and actually being in Belleville, like, for that draft. Like, just talk about that experience.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, yeah, to be honest, so going back to my Smiths Falls days, I actually that opportunity arose from PEI with the Andrews hockey growth programs there, and a connection we made, and I went to Pembroke, to be honest, and I was traded from Pembroke in training camp to Smiths Falls, and ended up having a really successful year, with the Bears in Junior A, and was somewhat heavily recruited through the draft process. Going in, and there's a guy named Kevin Abrams was a guy who watched me a lot, and he was working for Belleville at the time, as an AGM to Larry Mavity, and yeah, so I really wasn't sure where you're going to end up with the draft process. I knew Kevin knew who I was and watched me play a bunch of times in Smiths Falls, and it was a live draft back then, and certainly being in Belleville. and sitting in the stands and then getting drafted to Belleville. Pretty cool setup, pretty cool opportunity, and lots of players, families, fans in the stands. The draft tables on the floor like your traditional NHL draft. And yeah, I remember it was Derek Wilkinson was the goalie at the Bulls at the time. He's the one that met me down at the draft once the name was announced, and being able to get down there and shake some hands. And as a 16-year-old kid, you're pretty excited and fired up. It's kind of a little bit surreal. In that sense, you remember meeting a lot of people and shaking a lot of hands and being super excited and going back behind the stage and getting some pictures done and meeting with equipment sponsors and managers and trying to get all that stuff. It happens quick, but certainly it's a core memory I guess I probably have in my life. And the cool thing about it is the OHL is going to a live draft this year and going back into that format, and it's here in Kingston. So to be able to kind of live the other end of it now and be able to select players that are going to come down and meet you, on the stage or at the table is going to be pretty cool to be part of that on the other side.
It makes the experience much more, I think, cool and just memorable, I would say. Obviously, when I was going through the OHL draft, it was strictly online, and until now, it's been like that. But had you ever, obviously back then, I think major junior was the main route. Like it seemed like the number one route to go. Had you ever thought about the other route of maybe the NCAA, or you were just focused on I want to play major junior?
No, I was pretty thorough on it, to be honest. And frankly, when you're playing at Smiths Falls in that league, there was a lot of recruitment as far as the NCAA side goes. And so I weighed a lot of options on it, frankly. And part of it for me was I had such a successful season as a younger age, and probably wasn't going to be able to get to the NCAA through graduating high school and needed a couple seasons further in that league. And for me, the biggest part was I wanted the bigger challenge in hockey to take the next step right away. I didn't want to wait two more seasons in the same league. So that was a big factor in me choosing major junior. I did have some teams that had shown interest. Um, but I also love the pro schedule, right? Was able to, playing there, was able to go watch some OHL games, 67s games, Frontenac games, Bulls games, being in that corridor and seeing those players and it was very pro-like. So certainly I was drawn to that. And a lot of top end talent and players. So you ended up making my decision settling on playing the OHL. And frankly, I've lived a lot of my life involved with this league and would never regret it for a moment because it's a huge network of people and friends I've met along the way and certainly, it's become my job here. So it's really worked out for me.
I'd say teams like, whether it was Belleville or like Peter where I grew up, like the community really rallies around those teams. That's what there is to do on the weekends. And I remember going to games in Belleville, the famous like bull head that was on that one wall there that when they scored would light up and stuff. So that just brings back memories for me. But you being 17 years old there when you make the jump, like how was that jump for you to the OHL as a young goaltender?
It's hard, man. It's the best junior league in the world, and it's fast paced. And when you're making that step from junior A to the OHL, and you're playing against 19 and 20-year olds who are NHL drafted, certainly some guys had played NHL games, and so it's a challenge, and it's hard for young players. And early on, you kind of keep your head above water. You got good adrenaline, you're flowing, but as the season progresses and moves on, you're improving, but I find the OHL, the play always gets better and better as the season moves forward. And some teams get stronger throughout the course of the season. So it has its challenges, certainly had its ups and downs and ebbs and flows. But if you're competitive, you're working at it every day, then you can find your way, man. But it was a big jump, and I remember having an older goalie partner with me, and certainly that's always helpful. Have a guy you can kind of lean on who's been there and done it. And I had some good moments. I had some moments in that first year that were challenging, no question. Was able to play quite a few games for a first year guy. I think I played 34 or something in the 30s anyway. So got some experience that year and yeah, it's a hard league. It's a hard league for all young players coming in. Um, Becoming a bit of a younger league as far as that goes, and guys have to be ready a little bit sooner, but um yeah, I just find it's again the best junior league in the world. It'll challenge you every day.
Like with your teams too, like I believe, your first 2 years or you guys end up going to the semifinals each year. So it also like having good teams, having success building those like playoff runs might have helped you as well to experience it, whether you were in the net or also watching your goalie partner go through it as well.
Yeah, opportunity was there. Certainly, we had a good team for this first couple seasons in Belleville, where we were able to get to the semis. That first year, Mark Gallo was my goalie partner, and him and I kind of platooned back and forth and split most of the season, and then he got hot down the stretch and hot in playoffs, and unbelievable person, great teammate, and certainly be able to watch him do what he did, right, and kind of learn off of that and take it in a bit. And having some team success did go a long way for me as I got to carry the load the next season. I was fortunate to play with under Larry Mavety, and the one thing about Mav is if you were his guy, man, he played you. So, we had 66 games, I think, on the schedule in the OHL at that point in time. I think I played 60 or 61 or something of those games over the next 2 seasons. So he played me a lot. So I couldn't complain about that. Even when if I had an off night, he'd get me back in the very next day. But I was able to build I was able to win games essentially. So and stack them, one on the other, and we had good teams, and for me, it was never about the personal goals, always just about winning games, right? And having team success, and you have team success, and individuals get rewarded off of that. So those teams for me were, some of the most memorable teams because we had, good teams, but certainly teams that won a lot of games.
You had something else like I thought that was cool that happened. Like you obviously played 3 years in Belleville there, then went to Sudbury for your overage year. But in between that, after your third year in Belleville, you ended up playing some AHL games there, getting some pro experience. Like maybe talk about that. The season ends and you get to jump to pros. The second highest pro level, just behind the NHL.
Yeah, it was crazy. I guess when you're that point, and I ended up being an OHL All-Star in my 19-year-old season, and just wasn't sure if coming back to the OHL to play as an overage was the right move or not. Got a contract with Indianapolis. It was the IHL at that point in time, which was, pretty comparable to the American Hockey League. It was an older league, but be able to play a few games, at that level. So for me, I took that step. One of those decisions, man, I look back on that from time to time and be like, maybe I should just went right back to the OHL and played my overage season in Belleville. And I actually got traded to Sudbury while I was away playing pro because of the uncertainty of me returning and how that kind of played out was the Chicago Blacks affiliate team and guys kept getting injured along the way, some of the goalies, and as opposed to maybe trying to throw some younger guys in there that might not have been ready, they would bring in some older guys who've been there in the past and free agents. And when everybody got healthy, it kind of pushed everybody down the line. So essentially, for me, being the youngest guy, the opportunity just to go play and play regularly back in the OHL made sense. And I went right back on the trade deadline day of January 10th and finished my OHL career, in Sudbury. But yeah, it's one of those decisions when you're that age and you're trying to make, which is hard to do. Do you want to turn pro right away? Do you want to wait and play another year in major junior and kind of see how that played out? And they're tough ones to make when you're that age, right? Certainly. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to get to play some pro games. Was I ready? Probably not in hindsight. Probably would have been more beneficial for me to play my last year of junior, and be a little bit more mature when you do finally turn pro. But it was a great opportunity to play. Some guys who went on to play the NHL and a lot of games in the NHL. As a 20-year-old.
How do you make the decision too? I'm always curious. Like when you finish your overage year there in Sudbury, like there's always that choice. Do I go get my school done, like CIS back then, U Sports, or do I continue my pro journey there? Obviously, you chose the pro route, but like, how did you maybe make that decision between those two paths?
Well, you lean on people. Certainly, people who've been there, in the past, whether it be your agent or family. People kind of that have been in your corner over the years and try to take advice in and pathways of others along the way. So it's not easy because you get not pressured, but you certainly get a lot of interest from both sides of it, or I did anyway. So it was challenging. So for me, it just, I played pro a little bit the previous season, and the opportunity to go back to that level and try to work my way through was, what I ended up choosing. Um, I mean, school packages, to be honest, with you, back then were a little different than they are now. Certainly, they're pretty lucrative these days. Um, but I ended up choosing to go back to pro and try to work my way through and play as many games as possible. I kind of just adjusted to the pro schedule and living that lifestyle. And again, met a lot of great people along the way. But yeah, it's about leaning on your network, right? And people who've helped you along the way and making those decisions because some of those are challenging when you have to make those decisions at 16 or 18, 19, 20 years old as to what the best pathways are for your future.
And I think it's even tougher for like goalies too, because as you know, like we normally develop later, like that maturity comes in later to our game, but you end up having an 8-year pro career, as I mentioned. And is there any memories that stand out from that long career? Obviously, you mentioned the lifestyle, like, getting played or paid to play a sport that you obviously love and grew up, and that was always everyone's goal. But any core memories that come to mind when you think of those 8 years?
I don't think of necessarily um things that would have happened on the ice or successes I may have had. I've obviously played at some all-star games and had some big moments and wins, but it's just the people really when it comes down to it. It's just the camaraderie of hanging around the guys in the room or being on the road and going for dinners and the network of people that you meet. And these are the friendships you kind of create over the years. And again, a lot of them that you still work with today, right? In my job and seeing people around the rinks or shooting texts or calls or seeing how others are doing. And so when I think back of it, I always think back of my teammates and the friendships and that growing your network of people, right? And that's been kind of integral to me. Sitting in the seat I sit in today is just those connections you've made along the way.
It's funny whenever you talk to like a lot of guests I've had on, we go through their playing career. Obviously, at some point it ends and they transition to something, but they all talk about the same thing that playing the game, you miss it. But you, as you mentioned, you miss that camaraderie, being in the locker room every day, joking with the guys, going to dinner on the road, like creating those bonds because, you know, as much as it's awesome to stay working in hockey when we're done, but you never get that feeling of like the being part of those 20 guys in the room and the memories that come there. But unfortunately, it has to happen for all of us. And for you, you end up making the decision to retire at 28 and transition to goalie coaching there in Kingston. Like, how did that opportunity come about? And how did you know it was like the right time to transition to the next part of your life?
Uh, well, the decision was kind of made for me, to be honest. I had a career-ending injury, I tore a tendon in my ankle, and so at 28, when you're kind of toiling in the minors and trying to figure out what the next avenue is. Well, when I got hurt, and had to have surgery. It was basically you may return to your full ability, you may not. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm 28 here. What's the next step and next stage? And I had done well in the minors and probably could have stuck it out for a few more seasons, but essentially, wanted to still be in the game, be involved in the game. Um, so I started to look at that avenue. And I've been doing goalie coaching in the summers and running camps and clinics and all that kind of stuff and getting adjusted to it. And love the teaching element, frankly, and working with younger athletes and giving them some guidance along, kind of the same way that I got as a kid. And so I made the call to Kingston. And the reason why I was Kingston in 2004 as the goalie coaching standpoint is because Larry Mavety was here and he was the coach and GM and Mav I kept in touch with over the years. So playing for him in Belleville and so certainly going back to the friendships and the connections he made and yeah, so made the decision to come to Kingston. He had offered me the job, and the assistant coach here was a guy named Tony Similero, and Simmer and I had played together as well in the minors. So there was already a lot of connections and friendships. Seemed like a good transition and move. Certainly wasn't able to continue playing and to be able to jump in, to coaching at this level, pretty seamlessly was big for me. And yeah, man, I went in full steam ahead essentially from there.
I always like to ask people who transition from playing to coaching how funny it is to look back. And I think of us like as the goalie position. Like, I'm sure there was moments when you're teaching these goalies you have in Kingston and you're looking back at like when you were playing and being like, Man, if someone had explained this to me, or if I'd saw it from this view, I might have understood something a little better. Like just seeing, like it's crazy. When I transitioned, I was like teaching these young goalies, and I'm like, man, like I should have thought of that like it this way when I played. Like, was it kind of similar to you?
Yeah, I mean, so the one thing when I get into the coaching side of it is that, video is becoming a big thing. And as a goalie in the 90s, we certainly didn't watch a lot of, game footage of ourselves, just wasn't available to the same way it is now. But even in '04, when we get into coaching and we had a video coach there would break down games, and I was able to watch our goalies regularly and rewind and slow down and see the video of it. It was a little bit different perspective, right? As to how you play and the style of play. And it was evolving, the position was evolving. And certainly it got me thinking about, man, did I ever do some things wrong? Wham, was I way too aggressive on most of these plays in my career, and just different thoughts. Recoveries were different. All these different things, right? And elements. And like, fuck, if I just done that back when I was playing, that would have been a better way for me, right? So yeah, you had to evolve as a coach certainly too, and learning new trends and techniques and styles that, thinking outside the box of ways that were helpful for the goalies you had, and it never wanted to be cookie cutter, and essentially, make sure that I wasn't just teaching one way for those two different goalies essentially. So just watching a lot of video and learning from other coaches along the way, I think helped me evolve as a coach, right? And yeah, certainly gave me a different perspective of the game, as sitting on that side of it.
You also worked with like some tier two junior teams while you were also in Kingston. And the one I wanted to bring up obviously was the Voyageurs there in Kingston. Sean Sermon was a goalie you had one year, and I had actually ended up playing Team Canada with him. We were goalie partners there, and that year he went on a long playoff run, won OJHL championship, got himself a scholarship to Maine. So it's just funny, like looking down memory lane, and he was, we were going toe to toe during the OJHL season back then. He was definitely one of the best goalies. Like, how was it working with him? Because he obviously was able to, I think, take his game from the year before when he was in Quinty to Kingston, obviously with a better team, and they end up having that long playoff run.
Yeah, so I'd known Shaw beforehand. So certainly we knew we were going to have a good team with the Voyageurs that year, and we're just trying to find a few extra pieces that could push us over the top. And I thought there was more to his game, right? And I had known him, previous years working at goalie camps and whatnot, and I knew there was more to him. And confidence, man, will take you a long way. So when he got to us and was able to build a bit of that and start winning games regularly, I think he just kind of built confidence off that and just kept rolling. Now we had a good team in front of him. Certainly was a big part of it. We were able to bring in a lot of high end players that year, but he was the backbone of it. You don't win championships essentially without having good goaltender or really good goaltending, and he did that for us that year. And I don't care what league you're in, it is not easy to win. It is very, very difficult, and a lot of factors have to come together, for that to happen. And it fell in place for our team that year, because, you know, guys were just great teammates. They didn't care about who was getting the successes, who was getting the cookies in any particular game. They just cared about team results, the team winning. And Sean was no different, right? But man, he found consistency in that run and another level of confidence, and he earned everything he got, through that.
One thing I remember about him, which is so funny, he used to play and he'd have like one piece of duct tape on his stick. Like he wouldn't have like black or white tape. He had like a piece of duct tape. Like I just couldn't believe that. But hey, it worked for him.
Good Northern boy. Good
Yeah.
Northern.
You end up doing or being a goalie coach, whether it was in the OHL or the tier two junior as well, like having multiple teams. And I think that's obviously as important as a goalie coach. But maybe talk about the longevity of that. Like every year, teams maybe showing confidence and like, we want Kory Cooper to be our goalie coach. We like what he's doing with our goalies. Maybe talk about your philosophy and how you were able to have such longevity in that position.
Well, I would say first off, it's just my energy, because my passion for the game and my passion for, essentially goaltending in that position at that point in time. Um, you know, Again, I was a coach that I thought had great relationships with the goalies, and they certainly had a voice in their own careers, right, in their own pathways, and trying to work together with them, to make them better. So I just think if you have a strong relationship with them and you can get the most out of them, now you got to be honest with them. Some days it's not going well, right, and you got to get after them a little bit from time to time. But I just think they could probably see my passion and care for their results, right? And want us to succeed together, right? It's never about, me as a coach, right? It was about the team, it was about the player, and making sure they're in a real good state of mind and they have confidence, going into play. And again, it's a goalie, man. It's not a game of perfect, right? You're going to make mistakes, as we know, and there's going to be bad moments and bad times. You give up a bad goal, and how you respond from some of those difficult moments or games, certainly can define your career. I thought we just did a good job of being able to manage that. So, um, again, going back to the kid, I was a rink rat. I just love being around the rink and working with multiple teams, at the OHL here with the Frontenacs, we'd practice, mid-afternoon, and the junior A team would practice in the evening. So I would literally run rink to rink to try to go, manage everybody and put in the work, but just passion. It's what I love to do, right? Love to be around the rink, love to be around goalies, love to be teaching, in that sense, and part of good staffs and organizations, and yeah, I just love the game, man.
And obviously, that love for the game allowed you to get a promotion, I'll say. You 4 years there, AHL goalie coach there in Ottawa's AHL farm team system. Did you have to change your philosophy at all when you went to the pro level, or did you kind of just continue to stick with, this is my fundamentals are been working for me for these many years, and it doesn't matter if, maybe these goalies are a little older, like I can still help them and I want to stick to my guns here.
Good question. I would say you have to evolve some, certainly. For me at that point in time, I was working for the Mississauga Steelheads at the OHL when that happened. And we had Spencer Martin was one of our goalies, and Tyson Teachman, who oddly enough is our goalie coach here with the Frontenacs now. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of still the junior loop, and it was Rick Wamsley and Wammer, who is one of the best guys you will ever meet. Certainly was, for me, he's one of the guys that I've leaned on my whole career, and I probably wouldn't have opportunity if it wasn't for Rick. So uh, if he's not the main mentor, he's certainly right there for me. And I met him in Mississauga when I was working for the Steelheads, and through goalie clinics and whatnot in the OHL. And I think Wammer kind of just drawn to my energy and work ethic and, my passion. And I learned a lot off him. So, again, continue to learn, evolve, and learn from the best coaches. And he was working for the Senators as the goalie coach and coming down to watch some prospects. And Spencer was a high-end prospect at that time. And just formed a relationship off that. And then, he ended up getting me hired with the Senators to work underneath him, and in a system where there was only one goalie coach at the time, and everybody evolved to two, now three, and some teams four, in that position and role, the NHL now. But um, so that was a tough year. It was challenging because I would go to Mississauga and I'd be working with, Brampton and the East Coast League, go to Mississauga for the Steelheads and drive around the lakes down to Binghamton to work with the American League team there. So I was getting my fill, man. That was kind of every week, Monday through Thursday. It was just driving on the water, catching all three of these teams, and we're working my way back to Kingston. So there's a lot of travel, but that's kind of how I got my foot in the door through Wammer. And yeah, stylistically, working with the junior guys, they obviously need a little bit more teaching element. Where the pro guys, it's a little bit more about the maintenance side of it and kind of again owning their game and how they play. Got a little bit more involved maybe in the analytics side of it and breaking down how you define goals and chances against and what we're seeing as trends and patterns and how we can improve their games based on the trends and patterns that we're seeing. Um, when you're with the pros, they certainly will give you more information where the junior guys are just going to listen more and in most cases, they're going to do what you ask them to do. And the pro guys are going to be, a little bit more in tune with their own games, right, as part of it. So There's give and take both ways, but again, if you're have a lot of respect and they know you care for the position and care for their results, and how the team's doing, that most guys are open-minded to trying new things and new opportunities, and but you got to manage those relationships from the get-go.
You also on those teams there, especially there at the end in Belleville, the Senators there. There was a couple former Adlers that were on those rosters, Jordan Murray and a buddy of mine, Jordan Schwartz, who obviously has had a long career over here in Germany and was a good pro in North America. So I just wanted to throw those guys out there. Not sure if they were shooters in your goalie sessions, but
No
maybe
way I'd have
sometimes.
Jordan Murray shooting in my goalie sessions. I can tell you that. Swartzy was a captain of our team. He probably had some, but we were he was counted on heavy as far as leading the hockey team. And Murray's an awesome player, to be honest, he a power play specialist and such a good player for us. But yeah, um, probably didn't use him as much in goalie sessions unless I had to.
Unless there was no other resort to. How did you transition into like obviously after that you go back to Kingston there, get a back to goalie coaching, but also you become the assistant general manager. And I'm just wondering, like, had you always had a passion or a thought, hey, I'd love to be a GM one day? Like how did that opportunity come about for you?
Yeah, I mean, just I've been doing goalie coaching at that point for since 2004. It was 2019, I believe, and we had a really good team in Belleville that year. And you kind of always like trying to figure out, okay, do I just continue on as the goalie coach and try to get to the NHL pathway through goalie coaching? And we were doing well. I mean, we had Joey Decord and Philip Gustafson were our goalies that year at Belleville, which is, if you're thinking about that now, pretty awesome. And our team was good. We were a first place team that year, and that was COVID. And COVID hit, and it got shut down in February. And we had, big goals for that season. I thought we were going to be a team that could compete for American League Calder Cup championship and riding the backs of those two young guys and both extremely talented. But you're always trying to think of what's the best pathway for you. And COVID hit and everything kind of shut down and I kept in touch again with people in Kingston. I was living in Kingston and driving to Belleville, every day. And just a new opportunity and a new challenge. And yeah, so COVID hit, and the next season my contract was up in Belleville, and Kingston offered me the opportunity to come back and working at that point in my hometown. I married a Kingston girl, and get into a different side of it, into management, and still kind of holding on to the goalie coaching spot. So I thought it was a new challenge and new opportunity, and decided to make the transition to this side of it and back in junior hockey. And I've always had a high passion for junior hockey, and the teaching element and working with the younger players. So yeah, so I transitioned over to this side.
They probably knew too that, the previous years you'd spent so much time in the car driving around that for you to go scouting, it was nothing for you. You knew the highways like the back of your hand.
Buddy, so the thing about junior hockey is it's a smaller loop, obviously, and you have the 20 teams, but it's all of Ontario and a few American teams. But you're going to be in your own bed most nights. Okay, so there is definitely some driving, but you're going to sleep in your own bed a lot of the time. When you're a pro hockey, there's a lot of hotels, there's a lot of travel, and it's further distance. It's a lot of hours to put in. Not that it isn't in junior hockey, but you do get to sleep in your own bed most nights here. I walk my kids to school every day, with my wife, for example, and then head to the office. So it's a little bit different that way. Still a lot of demands. The pro hockey level, though, is people, if unless you've been part of it, right, it's a lot. You got a lot on your plate on the daily.
No, that's very true. Obviously, the same over here and in Europe. You end up getting promoted to general manager of Kingston Frontenacs, but you still hold that position today after 1 year there as an assistant GM. Like, did you feel you were, when you get that promotion, did you feel you were ready, or was it just kind of like thrown in the fire and here we go?
Thrown in the fire. No, I did not feel like I was ready. Obviously, I always followed junior hockey, and seen how teams were doing, and was familiar with some players. But again, it was just finishing up COVID. The GM was Paul McFarland, and Paul ended up leaving to take a job in Seattle as assistant coach, and then I was the AGM at that point in time, but we hadn't played any games, and we're just starting to come out of it, And next thing you know, the opportunity was here for, for me to take on the roles of GM. And man, there was a lot of sleepless nights off the get-go where it's just like where you're so, am I biting off more than I can chew here? Am I ready for this opportunity? And of course, you have to believe in yourself and your abilities, but it's a lot of nights where you're wide awake and you can't shut the mind off, right? Because you want to make sure you're going to do a good job, right? And again, there's so much care to it, and yeah, it took me a bit of time maybe to evolve into that and feel comfortable in it and learn the role and a lot of work. Um, Still learn every day, right? That's part of it. I can't just think I'm content and know everything. I certainly don't. Have to lean on people here within the organization around the league and you know, kind of stay up to date and everything. But yeah, those first few nights for me when I realized that I'd taken this job and accepted the position, man, I can remember the adrenaline flowing pretty good and just pacing back and forth, right? Hoping that I had this under control. And again, 5 years later, I'm still here. I'm certainly a lot more comfortable in the role. But yeah, it was a big step.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's just having that belief. There's always going to be people that maybe don't always see the same way you do in terms of team building or how to run things, but you just have to be confident. And, at the end of the day, it's your decision and you want to look back and be like, hey, I did it the way I wanted to do it. Speaking of building your teams, like what types of players are you looking for in Kingston and like how do you like to build your teams and maybe talk about like the core values that you guys have? As I mentioned before, Kingston is obviously a community team as well. Like the community wraps around that OHL team. I'm sure they do a lot of community work, but what types of players are you looking to have on Kingston?
And we're a fast-paced team. So our head coach is a guy named Troy Mann. So Troy spent 13 years in the American League, and he's always played an upbeat, fast-paced game. Looking to create offense, right, by essentially transition, right? And be able to get the puck back in our hands as fast as possible and everything works north. We're not trying to slow the game down and go east west all the time. We're trying to move and get into the offensive zone and have a lot of movement, a lot of puck possession, in the O zone. So when you're hiring coaches, certainly you have to take that into consideration as to how you're going to build your team and how the coach likes to play. So we got to kind of be built that way. So big in the back end. But they have to be mobile. They got to be good puck movers. They got to be guys that, are willing to make pass right away. It's not D to D to D. It's, maybe one D to D and the puck is moving forward. You want guys who can make, small plays out of the D zone, can use the middle pop, and we can exit through the middle of the ice. You got to have forwards that are going to be willing to get in on the forecheck, be able to turn pucks over, right? So, yeah, you got to be built with speed, right? We got to be built with guys who have IQ to be able to play, Troy's system. Sometimes it's hard to do. It's certainly hard for young players coming in right away, but he's a good teacher, he's a great coach, and they get there. It just takes some time for everybody to kind of understand, how that needs to happen. But that's our group. That's how we play. It's a fast game. A lot of stretch passing, a lot in on pucks, and rely on some high end skill, but. Like to build a team that's got depth, right? If we can be able to play four lines, certainly at the OHL level, you're always going to default to your top two lines a little bit more. But we want to keep coming at you in waves all the time. So, but yeah, that's kind of you're building a team based on how your coach wants your teams to play, right? So for us, it's lefties and righties on the back end, squeezing at the blue line, transitioning fast, right? And then have good special teams and good goaltending, and you can stay in games. And we got a younger team this year. I think we're still very competitive. Expect us to be very competitive when we're healthy. And putting a lot of 16, 17, 18-year-olds in the lineup and you're playing against some teams that are, more 18 and 19 and 20. You got your hands full some nights because it's just they're older, more mature, and physically a little bit stronger. But again, we think we're a good young competitive group.
How is it for you too as a general manager? Like I assume you would, every year there's potential players on your team or throughout the league who might get drafted NHL. So how is it communicating maybe with GMs or assistant GMs of NHL teams, scouts, agents? Like how is that in your position? And maybe like you can give some feedback to when they call, like what you're kind of talking about, and yeah, just kind of into that side of it, I would say.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of scouts that are, come to our games, right? And certainly around here and as the years go by, you get familiar with the guys. They start to know you, see them up in the scouts room and certainly that's a big part of it. You field a lot of phone calls from NHL teams, right? And their scouts and management side of it, and just trying to get to know your players a little bit, more in depth. I can tell you one thing: you're always honest. You can't, regardless of your players or not, you tell the truth. You can't lie about things. I don't think that's good for anybody's reputation, because you're going to work with these people for, you know, year after year, essentially. So yeah, you want to promote your players, but you're always going to be honest and truthful, about them and how you view them. Um, we like to think we got high character guys here. It's certainly a big part of, the players we're looking to have bringing into our group, right? So when we're interviewing players, so that's, the type of character people we want. Um, but yeah, so you form those relationships. I allow the NHL scouts to come in and meet with our players and do individual meetings here on the regular, um, which they do. And, I see our guys often. We probably have 2 to 3 guys maybe drafted each and every year, right? That we're obviously very proud of, when that happens as an organization, because you're developing players and so that goes a long way. But yeah, you just got to have those strong, again, bonds and connections and just being honest at the end of the day as to how you view the players both on and off the ice. The one thing about the NHL guys, man, they want to take deeper dives into everything. It's not just about, hey, this guy's great at exiting the puck. They want to know about the character. They want to know about the person. They want to know the family upbringing, right? They want to know if he's good in other areas of his life and, how is he at school? Like, they don't leave any stones unturned, right? So, you got to make sure you're well aware of your players as well.
That's one thing I've obviously seen over here. Like our head coach and GM is Dallas Aikens, obviously, and he's come from the NHL and the American Hockey League and been over there for so long with such a big reputation that, even here with Manheim, when we're signing players, like the amount of background information, the amount of people he calls, and almost like, meet these guys in person too. A lot of times, sometimes he'll drive 7 hours just to have a coffee with someone to get like kind of that personal feel to see how they are as a person. Because as you said, you can't leave a stone unturned. And, same with these NHL clubs, I would assume, they're drafting these guys for potentially someone that could be on their team for the next 10 plus years. We talked about it off camera. Obviously, the NCAA now with the new rules and how they allow, the major junior players to transition to the NCAA road after, which obviously when we were both growing up or playing in major junior, it wasn't that case. Like, how have you seen the effect on, the OHL or major junior leagues, like since this rule has changed?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's certainly challenging, right? It's a whole new landscape and environment of, how we're recruiting players, how we're getting players, and but retaining players is part of it. So, over the first couple seasons of this, we've benefited. We've gotten a lot of players who are NCAA commits who, want to come back to play major junior and a lot of them have chose Kingston. One thing about our city, it's a phenomenal city. Um, High education here with one of the best universities in the country with Queen's University. So academically, we have guidance counselors who make sure players are, committed to doing courses and staying up on that side of it. So we've been fortunate to give a lot of players who are NCAA commits and are spending their, last junior years here developing before they go to NCAA. Um, but certainly the other side of it is you can lose players early, right? You just don't know. So now we only lost one last year. I went to Miami, Ohio. Would have been an overage this season. You can handle those ones because they're a little bit older. And we're fortunate we haven't lost anybody early at this point in time who, want to leave junior hockey. I think it'll eventually kind of sort itself out and balance off, and players will have an understanding of, when they're ready, right? And taking advantage of the runway of your development years and play your junior hockey career out and then go to college. But certainly kind of still new to that, right? And evolving. So when you're building teams here, it's like you can build around some younger players. But it does make you nervous that those players, could essentially leave early and then everything you've been building towards, you know, obviously that could change. So it's year to year right now, frankly. Like I said, we've got a lot of good young players and guys that we think that we can be competitive with over the next 2 to 3 seasons. But we got to make sure we have an influx of older guys that are part of it and being able to retain some players because there's a lot of pathways and opportunities for players, which is fantastic. It's great for the players, but when you're building hockey teams, it's certainly is a year-to-year thing right now and has its challenges because there's a lot of unknown.
Couple more sleepless nights for you there that you were mentioning before. So,
No doubt.
you've been very gracious with your time. I got two more quick ones for you, and I'll let you go. Obviously, you got a lot of work to get to today. Obviously, it's about 10:50 there in the morning. Any future goals for yourself? Obviously, you've had such a tremendous career in major junior and in multiple positions. You worked in the AHL as well, but do you have any personal goals for yourself? Like, not to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, listen, for me, it's just about winning at this level right now. That's really what it is. It's just trying to evolve the organization and make sure that it's a premier organization, a place that players want to play. I think we have so many sellable pieces here in Kingston. We have a phenomenal facility. We have great ownership. The city is unbelievable. It's one of the best junior hockey cities I think you could possibly find. So for me, it's just about being an attractive destination for players and trying to win. Like I said, I don't care what league you're in. Winning is very hard. It's hard to do. So for me, it's personal goals. Personal goals is our team winning and having success. The rest of the stuff will take care of itself. Right now, I just focus on that. I'm not a guy that's looking to, jump into the next thing immediately. I just like to focus on the task at hand. And the task at hand right now is trying to find a way for Kingston to be able to win championships.
and like you said earlier in the podcast, I think, team success obviously leads to personal success as well. Like they kind of go hand in hand, but obviously team first there. Last one for you. So I always like to end on this one. What is one piece of advice or multiple people's advice you would give the younger generation out there? So if you're speaking to young athletes out there and whether they're 13, 14, 15 years old, what is one or multiple piece of advice you would give them?
Oof. I mean, there's so many avenues for that. I would certainly, for me, it's being open-minded to new opportunities, new suggestions and ideas. Um, but then certainly being true to yourself on that. But I think as a young player, um, you have to have high passion for everything you do. Like we have our 5 pieces of core values. I know you asked me that earlier, never really touched on it, but for us, it's in our weight room. And our core value starts with team first, right? In everything we do. We talk a lot about better people, make better Frontenacs. So we're looking for great people in the organization. We're talking about high level of accountability, and then guys who are prepared every day. And the last one of our 5 pieces, just passion and purpose, right? Have a high level of passion for the game, a love for the game, and purpose of where you're trying to get to. So those are kind of our 5 pieces of our core values, right? And I think just being open-minded to new opportunities, new suggestions, and trying new things to evolve your game as a player, as a person, I think goes a long way, in getting better, right? And if you love it, man, you'll find your way through. If you love it, you have to have a high passion for it. You gotta love what you're doing. And I just find that when players love it, people love it, and they're just not really working. They're just doing it because they want to do it anyway, right? I just find those guys, and you can see it in our practices with the young players. Practice is over, but they're still on the ice, still working on things. They're not just screwing around. They're working on things, trying to find ways to get better because they just have high passion for being a hockey player. And when you're surrounded by those types of people, right, I think everybody organically improves. And so looking for those types of characters. Um, so yeah, so you have to be open-minded, new ideas, new thoughts, new ways to evolve your game. You only get there, by having a big love for it.
Great way to end the podcast. I mean, true words are not said. So I appreciate you taking the time. We've been going about 45 minutes now. You going down memory lane with me, obviously sharing your experiences and educating the younger generation. And I wish you the best, the rest of the season here and obviously on your chase there for the Memorial Cup. I always remember as a kid watching those on TV every year, that tournament. And, it's a cool experience. It's a great league. As I said, I grew up in Peterborough, so I know a lot about it. And yeah, thanks again for doing this and best of luck this season.
Yeah, they're much appreciated, Harry. Same to you.
For those listening, anyone in this Kingston area, you want to go catch a game, I recommend going. It's a great building. I've played in it and watched games in it as well. Great community. And yeah, Fronts are a great organization heading in the right path. And until next week, Cheers and ciao.